Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Area 2 Planning Committee. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber and these members will be voting on proposals this evening. Other members of the council are also in attendance and/or participating via MS Teams and can take part in any discussions, ask questions, but cannot vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted, including the ground rules. Your attention is also drawn to the rules of public speaking in respect of planning applications and committee procedure rules in the council's constitution, which apply to this planning committee meeting. I note there has been a lot of public interest in the planning application on the agenda tonight, so for me to be able to effectively manage the meeting, I would appreciate if members of the public and councillors speaking only deal with the planning application before us tonight. Do not stray onto other matters. Please be advised that this is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting or a rally. Members of the public are very welcome to join us to observe the formal meeting, but should not be disruptive. When invited to speak, speakers must come to the microphone in front of the committee and not speak from the public area. Before we start with the formal business, we will confirm attendance of voting members by doing a roll call. If you'd like to take over, Sunny.
Thank you, Chair. When I call your name, please, can you confirm that you are present? Councillor Palmer?
Present.
We've received apologies from Councillor Brown, Councillor Banks.
Present.
Councillor Bass.
Present.
Councillor Bolton.
I'm here.
Councillor Boxall.
Here.
We've received apologies from Councillor Coffin, Councillor Crisp.
Yeah.
And Councillor Dean is currently not in the chamber. And we have received apologies from Councillor Harman and Councillor Hudson.
Present.
Councillor Lark. Councillor Roud. We have received apologies for in-person attendance from Councillor Tanner, but she's with us online. And Councillor Tatton.
Present.
We have received in-person apologies from Councillor Taylor, who is also with us online. So I can confirm we have 10 voting members present.
Thank you. I'd now like the officers present to please introduce themselves. Do you want to start with you, Mr. Bailey?
Hello, members. James Bailey, Head of Planning.
Mrs. Field?
Susan Field, Principal Planning Officer.
Pitcher?
Polly Pitcher, Team Leader.
Mr. Williams?
Ian Williams, Development Manager.
And Ms. Wang?
Taylor Wang, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Members of the public, applicant and/or agent wishing to address the planning committee are present in the chamber and will be invited to speak at the appropriate time. The speaking time limit of 3 minutes for each application continues to be applied, and public speakers are unable to participate in any discussion of the application. Please may I remind speakers that your face and voice may appear on the live stream and the archived recording of the meeting, and your names will be recorded in the minutes. I think there has been some organisation of this screen for people coming to sit down here. Yes. Yeah, so you're outside them. Sorry, I forgot to introduce our legal team that is online today. Could you like to introduce yourself, please, Joy?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Joy Ukadike, Head of Legal and Democratic Services and Legal Officer at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies, we have dealt with, there's no other to come from the floor. Declarations of interest from anybody on the committee? No, I will take that as a no. Minutes for the meeting held on September the 17th, can I confirm them as a correct record? Oh, all on your own there, no, Councillor Borton. I hope members have noticed that we have a supplementary paper that was added to the agenda, and there is items on both of the items that we are looking at tonight. And can I assume that everybody has actually read the supplementary? Thank you. So we will start with our first application, land opposite the Paddocks, Burling Road, Leybourne. This is a permanent use of a site for gypsy traveller families. Susan is, sorry, Mrs. Field is going to give us the report.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permanent use of the site for 4 gypsy traveller families. The site is defined on the site plan on the slide. The proposed site layout, as shown on the slide, comprises 1 static caravan, 1 touring caravan, a day room, parking and turning area for each pitch. As members are aware, as set out in the committee report, the site already has temporary planning permission for 4 pitches. However, the temporary permission was subject to a condition limiting the number of static caravans and day rooms, as shown on the slide. The next slide is just a slide showing the day rooms. Just a few key points. There is a demonstrable unmet need for the type of development proposed within the borough and county-wide. The most up-to-date evidence also demonstrates that there is an unmet need for the borough for 33 permanent gypsy traveller pitches. And just a reminder that temporary permissions do not count towards the council's identified need. There has been a fundamental change in national policy since the appeal decision granted temporary planning permission, and this is a material consideration when determining this application. Greater weight must be given to the updated NPPF and the material changes within it over the previous appeal decision in relation to Greenbelt. The site has been assessed under the new Greybelt legislation as set out in the committee report. As such, officers are of the opinion that the site would be Greybelt and subsequently meet the requirements of paragraph 155 of the NPPF, therefore appropriate development. There are now numerous appeal decisions in relation to the assessment of Greybelt, and the assessment in the committee report follows the correct procedure. The proposal does not increase the number of pitches. The introduction of 2 static caravans and 2 utility rooms would not intensify the use of the site to that which would impact on the character of the area or neighbour amenity. As Greybelt land, there are no policies in the framework that would provide a strong reason for refusing the proposed development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now have speakers for the application. I have speaker 1. No speaker 1? No? Sorry, I haven't got your name. I only have speaker 1.
No, sorry, can I just clarify? This is just for speaking. We don't record for or against, okay? It's just speaker 1, that's
Chair, members, I'm here tonight on behalf of local residents to urge you to refuse the application for permanent use of the unauthorised traveller site at Burling Road, Leybourne. This is not a routine case. It is a test of whether Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council will uphold planning law, protect the Greenbelt and treat all communities fairly. First, permanence for an intentional, unauthorised encampment is unjust to law-abiding residents. All other local families have had to pay full market value for their homes, as have you, and have always abided by planning law. They would never be permitted to buy greenbelt land to convert it into permanent housing. Yet this recommendation rewards unlawful occupation. That is not planning justice, it is planning injustice. Second, the officer's report is flawed and biased. It relies on the untested grey belt concept, which has no legal standing and cannot override established green belt case law. It ignores the local plan's policy's commitment to peaceful integration between communities. Instead of promoting harmony, this recommendation fosters division by privileging one group while disregarding the amenity and human rights of families in Leybourne, Leybourne Chase and West Malling, including those coping with illness, disability and special needs. Third, the objections have not been balanced fairly. Every parish council in the affected area objected. 61 formal objections were submitted by residents, yet these voices have been brushed aside. The settled community's concerns about amenity, highway safety and equality impacts have been disregarded, while the applicant's circumstances have been elevated above the law-abiding community and planning law. That imbalance undermines confidence in the planning system. Members, you are not bound to accept this flawed recommendation. You and you alone have the power to refuse this application and to defend that refusal at appeal if necessary, or allow the current temporary permission to run until 2027, when the planning inspectorate will consider the matter afresh. That is the lawful, fair and balanced course of action, and the only one that would be respected by the local electorate. Case law is clear. Unmet need does not override greenbelt protection. Red Hill Aerodrome versus SSCLG 2014. Children's welfare is a consideration but not determinative. Tanzania versus Secretary of State for the Home Department 2011. Intentional unauthorised development carries substantive negative weight, national policy and planning inspectorate guidance. To grant permanence here would contradict national policy, breach the Equality Act's duty to treat all communities fairly, and set a dangerous precedent across Kent and the UK. It would open the floodgates to further unauthorised encampments, of which there are already over 4,000 nationally, draining enforcement capacity, public funds and undermining confidence. Please refuse tonight.
Thank you. Can I have speaker 2, please? Thank you. I think it's still on. Okay.
Touch it.
Okay, I'll start when you start.
I've got to press it or not? Okay. I wish to express my strong objections regarding the proposal to convert current greenbelt land into grey belt for the travellers' site, particularly given the troubling history associated with this location. In December 2018, this site was at the centre of significant prosecution when James Maynard was jailed for 7.5 years and 5 others were sentenced to jail for selling fraudulent plots of land falsely promoted as suitable for development. To compensate the victims of this crime, the land was confiscated.
I'm sorry, we need to stick to planning things, not past history of the site. Thank you.
Auctioned and purchased by current owners. The handling of this latest application by TNBC represents a concerning departure from its previous stance. Once a council that actively enforced planning laws, prosecuted unlawful developments, and supported the courts in imposing penalties on the current owners, TNBC now seems willing to accommodate those who have benefited from prior wrongdoing. The very application that TNBC previously rejected and opposed at considerable public expense is now being considered as a legitimate basis for a new site location. The reversal undermines the credibility of the planning enforcement process, sending a troubling message to the public that TNBC's planning policies are easily dismissed and that breaking planning law can ultimately lead to rewards. By granting approval for such unlawful development, TNBC not only compromises its own authority, but also integrity of the entire planning system. Instead of steadfastly defending the Greenbelt and adhering to the established policies, the council appears to be yielding to expediency. This is not demonstration of sound governance. It reflects a concerning weakness. Every concession made today will resonate beyond this meeting, conveying a clear message. Those who flout the rules may ultimately be rewarded. It is crucial that we uphold the principles of planning. Green belts play a vital role in preserving the unique character of our historic towns, providing a buffer against urban sprawl. They offer essential opportunities for recreation, contributing to the well-being of local communities and enhancing quality of life. These purposes underscore the importance of maintaining green belts for environmental protection, community, health, and for the future generations. Allowing this conversion would not only jeopardise these values, but also set a dangerous precedent for future planning decisions.
Thank you. Okay. I now have our third speaker, Joseph Jones, who is the agent for the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Will you take your seat?
Good evening. The NPPF and its planning policy for travellers' sites is supportive of the provision of sites for gypsies and travellers in certain circumstances, such as in this case. There's a number of considerations when taken separately or together can outweigh harm, policy or other issues. Our case includes the following. The primacy of the child and the children are a paramount consideration. There's an agreed unmet need of 33 pitches within the district, more in the region and nationally. There's a significant unmet need. This fact alone carries significant weight. The applicants need a permanent place to live, and the council needs to balance its duty of care, the unmet need, the targets for pitches in the area, and residual obligations carried forward from the Housing Act. The applicants have gypsy status for planning purposes. The Equality Act 2010 and the Human Rights Act are engaged in this situation and add weight. A 5-year supply of land needs to be available for the gypsy traveller community, green belt or no green belt. If a local authority cannot demonstrate an up-to-date 5-year supply of deliverable sites, consent should be granted. The site is sustainable, and any new site in the area is going to be either in the open countryside, green belt, or similar. However, this site is grey belt. This application has limited visual impact, and screening can be improved if need be. There are no objections from highways. There's no objections in policy terms that are not outweighed by the personal circumstances or other considerations. Planning guidance says that if a condition can address concerns raised by a planning application, then consent should be granted with the relevant condition. Conclusion, the site is available, deliverable and sustainable. We agree with the suggested conditions. Finally, we urge the committee to look favourably on our planning application and trust the committee decision will be made with policy at its heart and grant planning permission today. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to take your seat back in the... Thank you very much, sir. Okay, I'd like to call Councillor Borton. Did you not call this? No, you called the next one. Sorry, Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Chair. Right. The reason for being a councillor is to represent residents and to make a judgment in their best interests. And in this case, the judgment must take into account a sound interpretation of the current planning regulations. One of the best ways of representing residents is to let them have their say at our planning meetings. At the last time we debated this matter, it looked as if the matter was going to be resolved before the residents had a chance to really have their say. So we decided that the matter should go to council to enable all councillors and residents to have their say on this matter of high importance. Since that meeting, there's been a change in the constitution that stopped this ever happening again. I think this is a hard case and it's led to a poor decision, which I think councillors that were responsible should perhaps reflect on. I feel it's the disgrace that to reduce the debate on a matter like this, which is of such high importance to residents. Our planning officers and the members not directly involved may get tired of listening to residents, but they have a right to be heard, and we have a duty to listen. Now, this application, we called it in because grey belt was a new concept. The government claimed that the basic idea behind green belt was to be upheld. But to us, it felt like green belt was being eroded by the interpretation of what is grey belt. It appears at this time, this is the first time that grey belt has been used in the context of a temporary traveller site becoming a permanent site within the green belt. My question really is, and for us to deliberate on is, should we be the ones to set the precedent? Or should we allow the inspector to look at the application to enable him or her to decide the government's intention when it comes to protecting Greenbelt? I hope the chair will give me a chance to come back when other members have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members like indicate to speak? Councillor Boxall. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point to note first. On the PowerPoint, the slide 3 versus slide 4. That is the application size and footprint, and slide 4 is as it is, or is that incorrect?
Sorry. That's the approved plan for condition 4 on the previous application. And since that's been approved, it's been established that one of the caravans hasn't been sited in that position, albeit I will say that it's never moved. So whether this plan was incorrect when it came in, but it has never moved. So we have now a new plan, and as you can see, there's dimensions or arrows. So we've got clear dimensions for the proposed plan so that we know exactly the size of the site and there's no encroachment.
Thank you for clarity. So look, I think we've heard lots around the planning policy, and we must acknowledge this planning application was previously granted temporary permission for 5 years, citing lack of alternative sites and personal circumstances of the applicant. The decision was made under the planning policy framework, which treated Greenbelt as sacrosanct, except in cases of very special circumstances. Now, as we know, this situation has changed. The government reforms introducing the concept of grey belt have created uncertainty. These changes mean that land previously considered inappropriate for development may now be viewed differently, especially where councils cannot demonstrate a 5-year buy for pictures. This fact weighs heavily on all of us. Our unmet need alone doesn't override the fundamental principles of green belt protection. The green belt exists to prevent urban sprawl and protect the characteristics of the countryside. Permanent permission here would set precedent that could undermine those principles. I've searched for examples where temporary permission on green belt, such as this, has later been made permanent with the grey belt test. I can't find an example. This is uncharted territory. If we approve this today, we risk opening the door without clear guidance. If we refuse this application, the applicant has the right to appeal, and the inspector can rule under the new policy. That, in my view, is the correct course of action, to allow the decision to be tested at the highest level and ensure consistency with national policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warden.
Thank you very much, Chair. So from the last time this was discussed, this is a fresh application compared to last time. So the point that Councillor Banks makes about it going to full council isn't very relevant at all to this to this meeting, because that would have gone to full council under the constitution at the time had the application not been withdrawn. So I don't really see what that's got to do with the price of bread, really. The other thing is there's basically three things that happened on this land 4 years. One, we had an unauthorised encampment in June 2020. Now, I have had lots of correspondence about it. I've spoken to neighbours a lot of time. I've sat in committees about this. I feel like I know the land very, very well. And what I cannot fathom is why the occupants of the land chose the means by which they did so to simply enter the site in June 2021. And this council correctly put forward an enforcement notice. And I think part of the problem here, you've got people who've entered the land who've made, as far as I can see, absolutely no attempt to integrate into the community at all. And to the point that the first speaker raised, I think is very fair in this regard. Let's just park the planning process for a minute, but like, got to get on with your neighbours, really, and that clearly hasn't happened. So I'd urge the occupants of this site start integrating themselves into the Leybourne community a little bit more, because clearly that's caused great resentment from some of the neighbours who are there. The second issue is that obviously that, if again, this is the plan history of the site as I understand it, that notice was appealed and the planning inspectorate decided to grant a 5-year temporary permission in 2022 that takes us to 2027. Now, clearly that was defended, as again was pointed out by one of the speakers, quite robustly by this council at the time, and I think that was absolutely right. And I think it was a poor decision, really, because clearly it was not the policy of this council to permit such an unauthorised act. And that is frustrating, and that's the nicest way of putting it. The third thing that's changed is the introduction of grey belt. And as is discussed quite in depth in the report, I think it's an excellent report in this regard. The concept of grey belt has made matters quite interesting for this committee, because actually, is this land and would the extent of this extension require us under the grey belt legislation to assess it? And it's covered in the reports. We've all read that, so I'm not going to go further. But I think that's the actual nub of the issue. What I would say, though, is that we often ask as a planning committee to have the ability here to do as much as we would like, as we want to do. We would like to go much further. I mean, the government would like us to do even less, but we would like to go much further. So I'm always most uncomfortable with us effectively saying, well, we can pass this over to the planning inspectorate and the planning inspectorate can decide, because that defeats the point of local planning. We can't pick and choose which applications we can't refer any applications to the planning inspectorate. We're making an assumption that they will appeal if we choose to reject permission. So what I'd like to hear, what grounds for refusal the local members might bring forward, because I'm not sure which way I'll go on this application at the moment, and I'd be curious as to whether we can frame a ground for refusal or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to speak before I go back to Councillor Banks? No? Nobody? Did you want to answer questions, Mr. Bailey?
Just to answer one point, I have heard members referring to, the issue of precedent being created, permission was to be granted. And I would just sort of refer to members that in planning terms, each application should be considered on its own individual merits based on the facts that are apportioned with that application. So strictly speaking, a precedent isn't created by members making a decision on an application just because you're making an assessment. So the report, and I would say this is a very detailed report on both the scenarios in terms of members accepting grey belt and vis-a-vis not accepting the grey belt definition. So I think the officer's done, I would say, a very good job setting out all the issues to members. But I would just sort of advise members that the precedent issue is not a significant factor, because you take each factor on its individual merits. You've got an individual equality assessment here, which applies significant weight. You've got the assessment of grey belt. You've got the 5-year land supply issue that you haven't got in terms of the need. and therefore there are factors stacking with the application that warrant assessment on their own individual merits and not on the basis of precedent to be created. So I just think it's important to state that fact. Thank you.
Councillor Banks, would you like to come back and maybe assess if you wish to reject the proposal? Then do you what sort of grounds would you like to do so on?
To be honest, I've listened to what's been said, and I suppose having read the officer's report, which is a very full report, but in the meeting, basically, I've heard nothing more, basically, that really adds to what's been said in the report.
We need some sort of recommendation grounds for rejection, if that's which you'd like to propose.
I'm not going to offer a grounds of rejection at this particular time.
Okay, does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to try and help here, I think. I think the crux of this application really relies, it's weighted majorly on the new MPPF. I say new, it's not new anymore, is it really? But we're still testing these greenbelt stroke greybelt cases. And in fact, it's happening as we speak, just down the road from us with a very large application stroke development site that's going to be contested or challenged on the very basis of greenbelt, greybelt. So I think the problem I have with this one is that it is weighted to this new MPPF. Well, I shouldn't say new. It is weighted to the MPPF, greenbelt, greybelt, and I accept that. We're sort of being pushed into a corner here by government, which is frustrating for us councillors and trying to support local residents. And I'm putting frustrating as a polite word. But I suppose where I'm going to dig a little here is that we've got a temporary, at the moment, where the greenbelt, greybelt argument is reliant upon a temporary permission. And that's where I think there might be a little bit of a chink in the armour here for the greybelt, greenbelt test. Because I don't see that that's been tested yet when you've got a temporary permission which gives temporary development, and then you're going to use that temporary development permission to then uphold a greenbelt, greybelt argument. And that's where I see a doubt in my mind, and potentially, yes, maybe going to an inspector could clear our heads on that as to where we really do stand in cases where you've got a temporary development permission that's supporting a greenbelt, greybelt argument. So I'm sort of minded to think there could be chinks in that armour. And I say it's early days for the greenbelt, greybelt MPPF and challenges. And like I say, we're seeing one that's happening very shortly, very close to Rootham, and that'll be an interesting challenge to see where that goes. But a challenge on a temporary permission that upholds greenbelt, greybelt definition, I think could possibly be worth exploring. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think I will take something, but I think this has to be considered as a totally new application for getting the temporary one. If this would supersede the temporary one, am I correct in? Sorry.
Yeah. So the grey-belt assessment was actually done on the purposes of the grey-belt, regardless of whether there's development there or not. So the assessment was done purely on whether or not it would meet the three purposes which you use for the assessment of grey-belt. Obviously, previously developed land is also considered grey-belt, but it's an and/or situation. So we have to take a look at those three purposes, and that's what's been laid out in the report. So from officer's opinion, it would still be grey-belt, be, say, a very weak reason to the applicant.
I've had this conversation with the officers, and grey belt, green belt, just totally. Apparently, green belt can be grey belt as well as green belt. Somehow. Do you want to come back, Mrs. Field, or you?
Just going to say that obviously it doesn't change the status. It is still green belt, but it has like another layer, and that layer is the grey belt, and that's what the MPPF supports, and that's what we base the assessment on.
Mr. Bailey, you're obviously dying to come back.
No, I'm not dying. It's just for members' clarity. So just to be very clear, the status of the temporary permission does not matter in terms of the grey belt assessment. Just want to be unequivocally clear on that basis. Mounting an argument on the temporary permission and grey belt would not stand. And I have to be very clear to members on that point.
Anybody else like to speak? No? Right. I have to then go to the proposal that stands before us, which is from the officers, which is to recommend the approval subject to the conditions. Could I ask, I know I did mention this before we started, condition 5, I know is occupied by any persons, cannot be occupied by any persons other than gypsies and travellers. Could we tie that to named persons? Is that possible? Who would like to come back on that one? Yeah, you want to? Up to you. Whichever officer decides they'd like to take it.
Well, I was going to say I don't see why not. They have to apply for a licence, though, as I think I mentioned to you before, as a permanent pitch. So there is that level of control via the licence, but I can't see an issue with amending the condition unless you disagree.
But Mr. Bailey's going to disagree.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree with the officer on that point. I hate to do that in this context. Yeah, I don't think that you should be applying, because applying a named person to a permission has to meet the 6 tests. Always, every single condition that we apply has to meet the 6 tests. It's necessary, relevant, proportionate, enforceable. And if on the basis that you know, what is the reason for applying a personal permission? What is that justification? If everything in the planning context is acceptable, and I see nothing in this report that says it is unacceptable, what is what test scenario would you apply that it actually meets those tests to apply a personal permission? And obviously, if members go down that route, and then obviously I'd have to, you know, probe that question. But if someone could say what is the necessary reason for applying that, when there isn't anything in the report that necessarily says that, sets that out, then I think that's why I slightly disagree with my officer. I appreciate we all have different opinions, and I don't like to disagree in a public arena, but that's how I would have to apply that test.
Well, Councillor Rowd before you, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking through those conditions, I know in condition 3, it says the touring caravans on site, which are not static caravans or mobile homes, should not be separately occupied. Is there any way we can actually guarantee to enforce that?
Would somebody like to come back? That'd be down to our enforcement team, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, don't you want to come back?
Yes, so it would be down to the enforcement team to go and enforce the conditions. So they'd obviously go out on site and check whether or not their touring caravans were being occupied.
Councillor Bolton.
Okay, so it looks to me like there aren't any grounds of refusal that are being brought to the committee, which is a bit of a shame, because I was sort of toying this up in my mind earlier, but it's clearly the committee is resigned to accept this. So I'll focus on the conditions. Just before I do, though, just a general point. If this planning permission goes through, it does not excuse the way this site became an encampment in the first place. And I think that's appalling, as I said earlier, and I cannot emphasize that enough. And I really don't want to do this, but we're operating as a regulatory committee under planning law and planning law only, and not morals or ethics. But point made. Right. I don't like to disagree with Mr. Bailey in a public forum, and he's a planner and I'm not. But one of the 6 tests of planning conditions is it relevant to the development permitted? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the temporary consent on this land is a named permission. So therefore, why it would surely be relevant to the development permitted for the permanent permission to be a named permission. So I would quite like to, I'd quite like to pursue that as part of a recommendation. And the reason for that is because that would then demonstrate, I feel, that actually this council is not simply rolling over and accepting this as a gypsy and traveller site in perpetuity. It is simply there because of the circumstances of the individual as directed by the case history by the planning inspectorate when they quashed the enforcement note.
Thank you.
Councillor, can I just come back first and say there isn't a named permission on the appeal? No, sorry. Condition 2 says the site shall not be occupied by any persons other than persons of nomadic habit of life, whether their race or, I won't read the rest, but it isn't named. This is on the appeal decision. Yep.
Councillor Saturn, I think you indicated.
I did, thank you. I seem to remember when we discussed this before that I raised an issue about landscaping, and there was a reason why at that point we couldn't consider further landscaping. I don't think there's a landscaping condition here, but it's in effect, as you've just said, a fresh application. And we heard from the agent that the applicants would be prepared to consider additional landscaping. That may or may not help. I think it would be perhaps a good idea for us to look at that. And in relation to condition 3, I'm just thinking of the stationing of caravans. I've spent quite a long time going through everything today, looking at various things, looking at appeals, being a bit forensic, I suppose. And one of the things I turned up in one of the appeals that was that it specified the number of days when the site could be occupied by more than the allowed number of caravans. And I think that was to deal with potentially family, friends turning up. And this is a big site, you know, and that potentially could happen. Would condition 3 control that in any way, or do we need to do something else that would prevent that happening or control the number of days? Does that make sense?
Mr. Williams, do you want to take that one? Who's?
Yeah. In this particular instance, I don't think it's particularly necessary. If it's just family coming to visit, it would be temporary for a short period of time, and it wouldn't be, it wouldn't really result in a material change of use, which starting of the caravan is. Obviously, though, if it had started becoming a longer period of time, then we could go and investigate and then possibly take enforcement action. But it's one of those things where if it's just for a temporary period, it doesn't actually meet the test for being development. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary in this instance.
I ask what is considered temporary?
I mean, typically for a sighting of caravans, I think under the GPO, I think it's 28 days, it's 1 month. But it's a grey area. Would be maximum.
Councillor Touching, we come back.
So we can't be more specific. Is that not within our gift to do that, to say, you know, not more than over 2 weekends, or as in a 2-week period? Can we shorten that in any way to give some certainty?
You would have to balance it with their right to family life as well. So there's that element of it. So preventing family coming to stay or friends coming to stay for a period of time, I don't think it would be necessarily reasonable.
Also, in condition 3, it does state shall be stationed on the site shown in the area at any time. So the 4 mobile homes, static caravans, and 4 tourograms defined in the Caravan Sites and Control Development Act shall be stationed there at any time. So in fact, they shouldn't have no more than that. So in fact, there shouldn't be any more, even if it's people coming through, really. Thank you.
That's partly what I'm trying to get at. You know, I don't want to see the conditions stretched.
Flouted.
You put it that way, Chair.
Yes, yes. Right, okay. Any other comments to be made? So we have before us a recommendation to approve. And I presume that adding a condition for landscaping would be acceptable. So we could add that delegated condition for, in conjunction with myself. So can we go to a vote, please? I think we're going to do it on a roll call. Oh, but I have recommendation. Oh, got to second it. Can we have I have proposed. It's proposed the recommendation. Can we have a seconder? Councillor Locke. So we do this on a roll call or affirmation? Affirmation? Is that okay with everybody to do it on affirmation? I need more response from you people. I need, yeah, agreed. Yes? Okay. I'm looking at Councillor Baggs. Is that general affirmation or not? Let's do the roll call. Okay, off you go, Sally. Let me just be clear. This is to agree to granting of the application with the addition of a landscaping condition that be delegated to the officers and myself for this application. So agreed means it's granted.
When I call your name, please, can you indicate whether you are for, against, or abstaining this motion to approve with the additional condition as set out by the chair, which is, so the motion is proposed by the chair and seconded by Councillor Lark and Councillor Banks.
Against.
Councillor Batts,
Approve.
Councillor Bolton,
For.
Councillor Boxall, Councillor Crisp,
I'm still very confused with this grey belt issue, so I shall abstain.
Councillor Hudson,
For.
Councillor Lark,
For.
Councillor Rout, Councillor Tartan.
For.
So we have, oh, sorry, and the chair.
In my heart, I would like to refuse, but I'm afraid there is no conditions we can bring to actually refuse, so I'm going to have to approve.
So I confirm we have 6 members voted in favour, 2 members voted against, 2 members voted and abstained from the voting, so the application is approved.
So for those on the YouTube channel, that was, could you read the figures out again, please, Sally?
And we have 6 members voted in favour of the approval, 2 members voted against, and 2 members abstained. The application is approved.
Application approved. Thank you very much. If you do not want to stay for the next application, you're welcome to depart. Okay. Sorry, we okay? Oh, we're just waiting for Mrs. Field to reload her laptop. For people in the chamber and on a YouTube, we are going to look at our second application, which is Grove Farm, Maidstone Road, Hadlow. This is an application redevelopment of student accommodation to provide 17 new homes. We have Mrs. Field is back on the when she finds her new bits of paper. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing buildings and the erection of 17 dwellings. This slide shows the extent of the site area. This slide shows the existing buildings on the site shown in grey, cars standing in purple, blue, purple, and the access in brown. This is Block A. I've got a few site photos. This is Block A. It's a single-storey building, and it's the one in the position of the arrow there on the top right-hand corner. Block B is another single-storey building, and this one here. Block C, oh no, sorry, I've missed one. Block C, this is the building that is very visible from Maidstone Road. And then again, Block D, this one is also quite visible from Maidstone Road. The next slide shows the proposed block plan. The existing buildings are annotated by the red dotted line, which I probably can't see very well, but they are all more or less on the same footprint. The access is per the existing. There's a turning area within the site and site parking, additional landscaping along the frontage, B&G area to the south, and some communal area to the north, up here. And I've just included the bottom half of the plan of the application site on this one. This shows the biodiversity net gain area. This is the floor plan and elevations of Block A. These are all one bed, kitchen, diner, lounge, all sort of together, then with one bedroom and a bathroom. This is the floor plan and elevation of Block B. These are two pairs of 2-bedroom units, single storey. And you can see the red dotted line is the existing building on the site. Elevations for Block C. These are the 2-storey detached dwellings. 3 beds, again, the red area is the existing building. Block D are the 3 detached 2-storey dwellings, again, 3-bedroom. I've got an aerial view of the site. And then just a CGI image of what the site could look like if members are. And obviously there's a supplementary with this one as well. Don't know whether you want me to go through that briefly or not. Okay, there 2 points were raised by the applicant. One was in relation to the heads and terms of the Section 106 agreement, and one was in regard to condition 16. I've obviously looked at condition 16, and that relates to ecology. Officers are of the opinion that this is important. It comes from Kent County Council. Therefore, I'm suggesting no change to that condition. But officers are suggesting that the heads and terms are amended to implementation of the development rather than the wording, which I think was above slab level. This is because obviously the site will be built out probably in a rotational, not all the slabs will be put in one go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a couple of speakers. I'm going to murder your name again. Fakia? Faika. Would you like to come to join us? When you press the button, I'll start the time.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Faika Kurum, and I live at 1 Grove Close, which is just around the corner from the Grove Farm site. I'm here today to express my support for the proposed redevelopment. The site has been unused for quite a long time, and for those of us who live quite nearby, it has felt like a missed opportunity, especially in a village where well-designed homes are generally needed. What I really appreciate about the proposal is that it isn't a generic development. The mix of smaller bungalows and more traditional family homes feels thoughtful and balanced. It supports first-time buyers, downsizers and families, helping create a more diverse and welcoming community, which I personally feel I'm not part of because I'm out in the sticks away from Hadlow, because that's where we are. I also value the that most of the homes are single story. That matters to people locally, ensures the development blends better with the area, and it also provides more accessible housing options for older residents, for those with mobility issues, something that is often lacking in rural villages. The parking provision also seems realistic for a rural location where most households still rely on at least one car. There are two improvements that I'd really like the council and the developers to consider. First, a safe walking path from the site and from my part of Grove Close into Hadlow, along with a bus stop. I have a young child, and at the moment it simply isn't unsafe for us to walk into the village. A proper pedestrian link would make an enormous difference to families and help reduce car use for short trips. Second, I want to raise a point about road safety. The stretch of the A road near the site, Maidstone Road, and right by the driveway has limited lighting and quite a fast speed limit. I'll be honest, I feel quite worried pulling out of my drive, especially at night. With more residents using that road, I think it's essential to look at improved street lighting and lower speed limit in that section. Overall, I believe the proposal is a positive step for the area. Just speaking from my heart, I am very out of the way, and we do not feel part of any community. And I feel like having that and something nice to look at would be amazing for us. So that's me supporting the application. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Stephen Hiscox, who is applicant for this application. Thank you.
The existing site is 55 rooms of accommodation. Whilst we have options to rent the space in its continued use, we are not landlords. We don't think it's in anyone's best interest for the site to continue providing dense HMO type accommodation. We know these sentiments are shared by the local community. We're a small family-run development business. We build around 15 homes a year. We come from an architectural background. Our projects focus on exceptional design and quality. We enjoy building homes that people love to live in. We had a 15-unit scheme in Tunbridge Wells win a design award last year. We think there is an opportunity at Grove Farm to do something that everybody can be proud of and that will stand the test of time. It's fair to say that we have made some mistakes in the planning process up to this point, but after a lot of hard work, the scheme is in a great place. The proposal you see before you has been worked up via a planning partnership agreement and in consultation with the planners, parish council, members of this committee and site neighbours. We've also had meetings with Kent Highways to ensure we are exceeding highway safety standards. We only have letters of support for the project. How many schemes for 17 units do you see where there is overwhelming support and no objections? We feel the proposal brings together brilliant design and meets local need. We've provided a real mixture of house sizes, and the proposal will create a nice community. We've designed the buildings to be modest but create interest. We're meeting the development contributions sought by KCC and are making the highest level of contribution we possibly can without jeopardising the deliverability of the project. The £307,000 offering is in excess of the sum that the independent viability consultant determined the site can support. We said when we entered the planning partnership agreement with the council that if we can work together to make the site more viable, we will not shy away from sharing any financial uplift. The fact we're upfront offering more than is supported by the viability consultant says everything you need to know about how we operate. We must ask that the suggested financial viability review should only be triggered if the development is not commenced within 12 months, rather than getting to slab level as currently suggested in the report. There are too many pre-commencement planning conditions. Any bank will resist lending us the money to build the project if the Section 106 figures could change during construction. If we start the project and encounter unexpected archaeology, or if weather delays mean we miss the cut-off for the slab being poured, it would throw the scheme into chaos, being at the mercy of another viability consultant. We won't be able to start the project if this change is not made. If members support the scheme today, you have my word that we will get on and build it out. We will do a good job and make you proud.
Thank you. Could I just check something with the officer first? The viability that we've discussed in the supplement, would we need to add that to the recommendation or to the proposal, or is that something you can deal with as a delegated power?
You mean the changes that I've
Yeah,
suggested?
yes.
You'd have to agree to check that the heads and terms would stay for whichever option, so that wouldn't change, but you need to agree that you're happy for that to change too.
And the slab level viability?
No, that's the change would be that it's
No
commencement
slab
of
level.
development.
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Bolton, you did call this one in.
Yes, I did. Thank you. So this is a really interesting application, I think, because you can't really talk about this without looking at the planning history at the bottom of page 56. As Stephen, the applicant, referred to, in his words, there have been some mistakes on this site, and I think it's taken a little while for a scheme to come forward that could be presented to committee, including withdrawals, including looking at student accommodation for HMO, which really sort of triggered the interest at the time. Now, obviously, that was withdrawn last year before this was brought forward. And as has been referenced, there's been an awful lot of engagement locally on this application prior to it coming to committee tonight. Although it falls on the main road between Hadlow and Merryworth and has got a Hadlow address, it's actually in East Peckham Parish, which is interesting. But right on the border, and the parish council in East Peckham have no objection. And you think, well, hold on a sec, this is a 17 home scheme in the green belt. It's not we don't have grey belt to worry about on this at all. We just have we have a 17 home scheme in the green belt. But I think a lot of us know the site very well because it's the sort of place we pass and never stop. And we never stop for a reason, because effectively it is derelict use at the moment and has been since before Hadlow College had its financial troubles. So I'd like to sort of thank the applicants for really the level of engagement that they've gone to with the local community, including the neighbour who's here tonight. There is the potential, if you get this development wrong, for quite some significant impact on the landscape. The land, not necessarily from the angle we're looking at, but if we were to look from if that CGI was taken from the southeast looking towards the northwest, the land is very open and the land rises then towards West Peckham effectively. So we've got to be mindful, but I think it's been designed in a very sympathetic way, and some of the detail around the materials is very important. I also want to comment on accessibility, because at the moment this site is only accessible by the private car. The desire has been expressed already for a walking route into Hadlow, which I think it would be lovely, albeit perhaps a long-term aspiration, I would say. But the number 7 bus passes here every 20 minutes occasionally, so I think I'd quite like to see whether we get a bus stop or whether we do it as a condition or as an informative or whatever. But I'd really like us to see if we can just get a bus stop on either side of the road as close to this development as possible. Now, people who know more than me about bus stops may be able to tell me whether, because the road does bend round a little bit toward as you drive towards Hadlow, but I think it's important. The other point that I want to raise that speaks in favour of this application is the housing mix, and this links to the affordable housing point. So it is correct that there is no affordable housing via the planning definition of affordable housing that we use on this site. The reasons have been explained. I think they're articulated really well by Sue in the report, and actually it's a really good and comprehensive report. So thank you, Sue, for that. And obviously, effectively, the costs that have been incurred to date, and also the costs of developing the scheme from what is there at the moment, aren't insignificant. And we've already heard how that's going to require some borrowing. However, we've got 8 units, I think, which are effectively 1-bedroom bungalows. And how many times do we get applications at planning committee which we say we really need some bungalows, some upside, some for first-time buyers or for people downsizing, and for the elderly. And here we've got a great opportunity to provide bungalows, which are sympathetically designed, which are located in a rural area, because obviously a lot of the single level accommodation now is being delivered in flats, which are generally in urban areas, but that's not for everyone. Some people would be quite like to downsize into a rural community, and if we can get a bus stop, then happy days. So I find myself, there's an awful lot going in favour of this application, despite on first glance you thinking, well, hold on a second, this is 17 homes in open countryside in Greenbelt. But I think it's a really good example of where you have to be pragmatic with the planning system and not necessarily ideological in terms of around just sort of thinking it's Greenbelt, it must be refused. Just finally, and then I'm sure Sarah will want to add, the recommendation is really down to us because we've got two issues to discuss when it comes to affordable housing. And this is one of the reasons why I was quite keen that this progressed to committee. Effectively, there's option 1 and option 2, which are set out on the papers, page 80, 87 and 88. I won't read out I won't read them out because everyone can read it for itself. I do take the point about the development not being built to structural slab level. If I can get my words out, I think that's an important point, and it's touched. I'm sure we'll discuss that as we go along. Now, I'm not overly. I don't have a strong opinion myself, but I'd be interested in whether others do about whether we go for option 1 or option 2. Were we to approve, I think I would, if pushed, I would say option 1 might be option A. Sorry, 1 and 2, A or B. Let's the first one. I'm going to call it for simplicity's sake. I think if pushed, I would suggest the first one, but I'm by no means wedded to that view, simply because I think that gives us the it gives the incentive for something that we've already heard discussed tonight, which is to get this development built out, because as has been discussed, this would be a significant improvement on what's there at the moment. But I shall reserve judgment on that, listen to what other colleagues have got to say, but I'm supportive of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crisp. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hodson. I apologise, Councillor Crisp. I know.
No, I'm the smaller person of the two.
Big in my heart.
It was just to reiterate, as Matt has said, that this is a marked improvement on what is there. For those that are familiar with the site, before it became a Hadlow College student accommodation, it was referred to in our house as the log man, because the farmer in the house used to chop up the logs in the barn that isn't there anymore. Anyway, I think everyone can see what a significant improvement would be on the local area. It's another development after Grove Close, as the resident has said. And in fact, the resident contacted me back in 14th of November. And I have actually contacted, with my KCC hat on, the public transport team to see whether we can look into getting a bus stop in that locale. The public transport team discuss any requests for new stops with the bus service providers and determine whether or not new stops can be installed in terms of demand and commercial viability. So that is with them at the moment. So it's basically down to the bus operators whether they think it's viable to have a bus stop there. So I've left that with them to determine whether or not it's something that we can discuss further and possibly achieve. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. That is very good arranging for us, because that was obviously one of the things that we cannot actually determine here. Councillor Crisp.
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, I know this site as well. I actually went there again today, and it's prime brownfield site. If only we had another 1,000 or more of those, then we could save our green belt, couldn't we? And our farmland. But no, I think it's great. I think a slip road would be really good, because I know how fast the cars go along that road. And my son had his best friend lived in your estate, and it was very dodgy coming out of that road. So that would be a really good idea as to sort of fit that as well. But essentially, I think it's great. So yeah, I'm in full support of it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment? Oh, Councillor Lark.
Thank you, Chair. it's great to see somebody doing something intelligent with a site that really does look like an old bombed out whatever. It looks like an army training ground at the moment. It's got battered and chips all over it. It's terrible. I do take what Matt has said in terms of, I think, 2 bus stops, and there is enough room either side of the road to get them off the main road, because I wouldn't want the bus necessarily stopping there on that bend, because I can see, no, it's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, but that seems to be the lower element of speed going down there. I mean, I've been overtaken by people doing 75 and 80 mile an hour. So I think bus stops, there's enough verge. And opposite, there is a big farm entrance for part of Hewlow Farms onto their part of their strawberry. So I wonder if there's also a way of potentially reducing the speed limit there. That's out of their remit. It's into yours, Sarah. So yeah, sorry, KCC, that's you. Yeah, I think that the design is imaginative. I agree with Matt. The mix of single-story dwellings suits people of all ages. And as I'm at the upper limit of all ages these days, yeah, I was actually suggested by my lovely colleague on my right, said, you can be moving in there soon. Oh, thanks. Yeah, the path, I think, would be absolutely wonderful, but the bus stop, but the path is aspirational. I've just had a look. If you go all the way to Hadlow from Grove Close, it's actually 1.7 miles, but half of that's done. So let's say we've got 800 meters. When I was knocking out the footpath in civil engineering, 1,500 quid a meter was great. So there's your £1 million gone. And I'm sure that KCC, have they got £1 million spare for a path? No. So it would be aspirational, but the bus stops would certainly take away the remoteness, integrate it. I mean, because their address is Hadlow. It's far nearer Hadlow than it is East Peckham. So I'm in support of this. I think it's imaginative, creative, sensible. Thank you.
Thank you. Great thing, but it would be a bus stop. Great to have the bus, but it would appear that without a path, it would be only the residents of this site that were having their own personal bus service. But there's nowhere to get to it without walking on the main road, is there? No way to.
There Hewlow Farms on the fields opposite and going up towards the bit up 7 Mile Lane. I think there are a lot of their staff in residential caravans up, so they would potentially have. There's probably 50 of them up there. That is potentially have another 50 people who could be able to take the bus either to Maidstone or Tunbridge.
Just the dangerous walking on that road that would worry me. Thank you. Anybody else like to comment on this? Yeah. So bus stop, Councillor Hudson would be dealing with. Walking path would be aspirational. Did I miss any electric charging points for vehicles? Sorry.
Dealt with under builder control now.
Under builder control. So I think that's fine. What we do have to consider, if we are granting this, we do have to decide on, well, I've got A and B and 1 or 2. Could Susan, could you go through?
You've got 2 options before you. So the heads and terms will stay the same. So that will now change to be the implementation of the development rather than structural slab level. As I presume you're all in agreement, seem to be on that one. And then you've got 2 options. So the developer, whilst there's no affordable, the developer would still pay the Kent County Council contributions and the open space contributions, because whilst there's open space on the site, it's not enough. So there is a deficiency. So the developers offered to pay that. And that's option, I'm going to say option 1. I'm sorry, I put A and B on one side and 1 and 2 on another.
Page 88.
So we'll call it option 1, but the developer has also offered a one-off fixed contribution fee of 307,000. This would not be index linked, and this would be payable, could be payable commencement of development or to be agreed. I think we would need to establish, but the heads and terms will stay the same as that. So you've got 2 options. One would be index linked, one would be a fixed payment.
Anybody like to come back on that one? Councillor Board.
Just to help members, I'll explain why I'm minded to go with option one. There's two reasons to that, really. First is I think it best kind of ensures it's built out, and I hear what Steve said tonight, and I've got no doubts, no doubt about that. But I just think it's important that we gradually deliver planning authority. The second reason is one-off sums are great, but they get swallowed up with inflation. I think if we index link it, set out for us quite clear. I just think that's preferable in terms of what do normal scale of where this money goes. So, but if members want to go to option two, I'm not inclined to bitch over it.
Okay, anybody else? Sorry, you.
Sorry, can I just clarify on the option two, the fixed fee would still pay the Kent County Council contributions and it would still pay the open space contribution, but there would be a surplus. So we would sort of still know where the money's going, but there would be that surplus which could go back to the affordable housing theme for off-site contribution.
Okay, I'd like to take this almost in two parts. Part one is the proposal that this is approved. And as a second part as to what option that we'd like the officers to go ahead with for the 106. So can I make the proposal that if I find it, the approval of the officer's recommendation subject to the 106, which we will go, and the conditions, and I would like the condition 16 definitely in, I'm afraid. Okay, and are we all happy with the no slab level for the 12 months that they were built on? So that's the proposal. Can we do it by affirmation? Everybody happy? Everybody agreed? Yeah. Okay. So unanimous. Oh, second up. I forget a second. I was Dennis Kingler yesterday. He was rolling over. So Councillor Hudson would like to second that. So let's go back to page 88 with our two options of the 106. Would like to a bit more discussion on this, or do we have opinions on this? I'd like to say, what from the officer's point of view, what would you think would be? I'm gonna flip this over to you. I don't. Oh yeah, I'm gonna flip that one back. Okay.
I'm doing that.
Okay.
I'm doing that if I get the opportunity.
Councillor Hudson.
I would like
Councillor Hudson.
I would like to propose that we do option 1A.
1A.
I'm hedging my bets.
Yeah.
The first one, index linked.
So affordable house mechanism and developer contributions indexed linked. Is everybody in affirmation of that? I seconder. Councillor Lark. Everybody general affirmation? Yeah, agreed. Okay. Thank you. It's agreed. So for people on the YouTube, that was agreed unanimously to go with option A or 1, depending on which page you're looking on, for the 106 agreement and agreement for the development. Moving on, we have planning appeals. I have no planning appeals in front of me that I can discuss. No, we don't. Oh, I haven't. Sorry, I haven't got that in my. Okay, Mr. Pitcher is going to do a quick summary of the appeal that she's got in her paperwork.
Thank you. Just the one appeal, it's a householder extension which was dismissed, and the main details are it was dismissed on the grounds of cumulative impact and it being disproportionate and therefore inappropriate with the definitional harm there. The inspector did note that the MPPF doesn't give a percentage marker as to what is disproportionate and what isn't, but the volume increase was 54% and the floor area was 51%. And the inspector concluded that on those figures, it was disproportionate. They also concluded it was harmful to openness because the new extension was going to broaden the width of the property. So it was going from a smallish property with a garage to quite a sprawling lot of built form across the site. So it was dismissed on those reasons. And I think it's a good one for, Greenbelt decisions going forward.
Thank you. I have no urgent items and most of the public seem to have left already. So I'd close this meeting at 8:50. Thank you very much. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you for joining us.